Some mysteries fade with time, but others cling to the edges of reality, waiting to be told. Tonight, we dive deep into the unsolved paranormal mysteries that still haunt us today. These are the stories that defy logic, escape explanation, and whisper in the dark when you think you're alone. If you've ever felt a chill without a breeze or seen something out of the corner of your eye that shouldn't have been there, you're not alone. Candle, welcome to Tales Nameless, where the shadows speak, and the forgotten are remembered. Before we begin, hit that like button if you're ready to enter the unknown. And subscribe with the bell on, because the next story might just be the one you've lived through without knowing it. Story 1. The Woman Behind the Curtains. Have you ever seen someone standing behind a curtain, but when you pull it aside, there's no one there, and nowhere to hide? Have you ever lived in a house that felt like it was breathing? I'm not talking about the wind through cracks or the creaking of old wood. I mean something deeper, something alive. My name is Daniel. I grew up in a small town called Eugene, in Oregon. It's a quiet place, surrounded by foggy hills and dense forests. In my early teens, I lived with my mom in a small rented house on the outskirts of town. It was nothing special, just an old home with creaky wooden floors, peeling walls, and flickering yellow lights. But what made that house truly strange was the heavy gray curtain in the living room window. It was so thick, no light could pass through it. During the day, it looked harmless. But at night, when the moonlight slipped through the edges, I always felt it was hiding a pair of eyes staring out. My parents divorced when I was little. Mom worked night shifts as a nurse at the local hospital. That meant I was alone a lot on those long, cold nights when the whole neighborhood seemed swallowed by darkness. I was used to being by myself, but something about that house felt off. Not just spooky, but a sharp kind of dread, like needles pricking the back of my neck, especially every time I passed that curtain. I never told my mom. Partly because I thought it was my imagination, but mostly because I feared saying it out loud would make it real. The first strange thing happened on a stormy night. Rain pounded the roof, and the wind howled through the trees. I was lying on the living room couch reading an old comic book when I heard a faint sound, swish, swish, like someone brushing their hand against fabric. It came from the window from the curtain. I thought maybe a mouse, or the wind. But all the windows were shut tight. I stepped closer. Listened. The sound came again, a soft, rhythmic touch, as if someone was gently stroking the curtain from the inside. I took a breath and pulled it open. Nothing. Just rain-soaked darkness. But when I let the curtain fall back into place, what I saw in the reflection of the window made my heart stop. There was a faint outline, not of me but of a woman standing behind me. Long hair falling over her face. Blurry, but still, she didn't move. She just stood there, like she had been waiting. I spun around. No one. The room was empty, but the air felt thick like something ancient had just passed through. I didn't tell my mom. Again, out of fear. Or maybe denial. But from that night on, I noticed, the curtain never stayed completely still. The sounds became more frequent. Every time I turned off the lights to sleep, I'd hear footsteps, soft, bare feet walking across the wooden floor. Not my mom's, they were too quiet. Too steady. Like someone pacing in the dark. I tried checking. I turned on every light. But found nothing. Then one night, when Mom was home, we both saw it. We were watching TV when the curtain moved just a slight ripple, as if someone had gently pulled it and let go. No wind. No open window. But the movement was real. Mom stood up, clutching the remote like a weapon. She slowly stepped toward the curtain and suddenly yanked it open. She froze. Her face went pale. She said nothing. Then she turned, grabbed my arm, and led me straight into the bedroom. She locked the door behind us. That night, I curled up under the blanket. I didn't dare ask what she saw. But I heard it too. A lullaby. Very soft, like wind whispering through tall grass. But it was unmistakably a woman's voice, warped, off-key, unintelligible words. It came from just outside the bedroom door. When I pressed my ear to the wood, it stopped. But I swear, I still felt breathing just on the other side. Then came the worst night, October 30th, the night before Halloween. It was pouring rain. Mom had to cover an emergency night shift, so I was home alone. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound, creak, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. It was coming from the living room. I held my breath. I listened. Then a faint laugh. A woman's laugh. Short. Uneven. Like someone who had forgotten how to laugh after years in the dark. I turned on my phone's flashlight and stepped out into the hallway. As I neared the living room, I saw the curtain, bulging, just slightly, as if someone was hiding behind it. Then suddenly a pale hand slid out from under the curtain. Thin, bony fingers. Long, black nails like coal. I screamed and ran back into my room, locked the door, and stayed awake until sunrise. In the morning, when I finally dared to look, there was a handprint on the window glass, small, fading, from the inside. My mom didn't say much. But within a week, she found us a new place. We left everything behind. Years later, I moved to Chicago. Life moved on. I nearly forgot. But on quiet nights, I sometimes see the gray curtain in my dreams. Still. Silent. Waiting. 2 years ago, I returned to Eugene for a work trip. One night, I drove by the old street, part curiosity, part impulse. The house was abandoned. Overgrown weeds. Roof falling apart. But the gray curtain? Still there. Untorn. Clean. Like time had never touched it. I took a picture with my phone. When I looked at it, I saw her. The woman. Hair covering her face. Standing behind the curtain. I deleted the photo. And I swore I would never go back. Story 2, The Echo from Room 313. I used to work night shifts at a small hotel in the suburbs of Oregon. It wasn't famous, nothing special, just an old, 3-story hotel built in the early 20th century. But there was one thing every employee knew: no one wanted the night shift when room 313 was booked. That room sat at the end of the third-floor hallway, a dim corner, even during the day when sunlight streamed in. The hallway lights near that room always flickered. The electrician came 3 times, each time saying, "There's something wrong with the wiring, but I can't find the source." I didn't believe in ghosts. I thought it was just some old urban legend to scare new staff. Until I had to cover the first night shift where a guest actually checked into room 313 after nearly 3 months of it being vacant. The guest was a middle-aged man, booked online. He looked tired, quiet, barely said a word. When I handed him the key, I joked, "Room 313, not many people choose that one. Hope you have a peaceful night." He didn't respond, just gave a faint smile and wheeled his suitcase upstairs. I didn't expect that night to change everything I believed about the world. That shift was normal until 2:37 a.m. The system showed room 313's door opened. I glanced at the monitor. The door was wide open, but no one came out. The hallway cameras showed only black and white static. I called the room. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. Out of responsibility, I grabbed a flashlight and went up. As I neared the hallway's end, I heard a soft whisper from inside room 313. "Can you hear it?" I froze. It wasn't a man's voice. It was a woman's, more like a breath against the ear than a voice. I gently pushed the door. It opened by itself, though I was sure the system had locked it. Inside, the lights were dim. The guest was sitting on the bed, motionless, back facing me. I asked, "Sir, is everything all right?" He didn't respond. But as I stepped closer, he slowly turned face pale as a corpse, eyes wide and empty. "I'm not alone," he said. "There's a woman, standing in the wall." A chill ran down my spine. He pointed to the left wall of the room where an old, dusty framed painting hung. "She stands there, every night. She has no eyes. But she sees me. She keeps asking if I can hear her voice." I looked where he pointed. Nothing but the wall and that painting. But then, I heard it. A knock. From inside the wall. like nails scratching from behind the plaster. Knock, knock, knock. 3 soft, steady taps. Then silence. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to run. But the man grabbed my wrist, his nails dug deep into my skin. You have to listen. She wants to say something. Tonight is the last chance. I yanked my arm away and fled to the front desk. I reached for the phone to call the police, and then the power went out. Total darkness. And I heard her voice through the front desk intercom. We never left this room. The next morning, I returned to room 313 with the manager. The room was empty. No guest. No suitcase. No trace. We checked the system. There was no booking under that name, no email, no credit card. Nothing. As if no one ever stayed there. I couldn't accept that. I looked through old records with help from a friend in the city. And I found this. In 1987, a woman named Lillian Grace vanished from room 313 after reporting to police that someone was following her. No body. No sign of forced entry. Case marked unsolved, and the room remained unused for nearly 20 years. Only recently, the hotel got a new owner, renumbered the rooms, and 313 was reintroduced. I believe the voice I heard belonged to Lillian Grace. She's trapped, with no one to hear how she vanished. And every night, she whispers from the wall, hoping someone will listen. I quit shortly after. I didn't tell anyone for 5 years. But sometimes, when I turn on the radio at night, I still hear 3 soft knocks coming from the speaker. Knock, knock, knock. I'll never forget that man's lifeless face. And I'll never forget the last words through the intercom. We never left this room. Room 313 has a new number now. But if you ever stay in an old hotel, and hear whispering around 3 a.m., ask yourself, is someone in the wall, whispering to you? Story 3, The Farmhouse That Watches. There's an old farmhouse, tucked away in a remote rural area not too far from the city, yet far enough to feel an unsettling kind of isolation. I went there in the summer of 2011 with my husband and 2 small children, hoping to find a quiet weekend getaway, something to escape the constant noise of city life. This farmhouse wasn't our first choice. But the moment I saw it from afar, something about it felt strangely right. Despite its rundown and abandoned appearance, the cool breeze, the peaceful scenery, and the slow drifting clouds made it feel like the perfect place to relax. The house looked centuries old, with large windows, faded brick walls over a wooden frame, and a roof of cracked shingles. But even as I admired its rustic charm, I couldn't shake a strange feeling. It felt like something or someone was watching us. I didn't mention this to my husband. I just said the place had a classic beauty, close to nature. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the sensation that the house had eyes. The first day passed uneventfully. But that night, things started to feel off. We were sitting together in the living room when I glanced out the window into the backyard. Something didn't sit right. I couldn't explain it, but I had the strong feeling that someone was standing way out there just watching us from the fields. Maybe we're just tense, I told myself, trying to dismiss the unease. Then, I noticed the light near the dining room window dim just slightly, as if someone was standing right outside. I walked over, pulled back the curtain. Nothing. No one. I turned to my husband and said, "I don't feel safe here. This house feels off." He just smiled. "You're probably just tired," he said. But I knew what I felt wasn't a dream. And it was only beginning. The next day, I stepped outside, hoping the sun and garden air would calm my nerves. I wandered past the backyard, noticing an old well and a collapsed chicken coop with rotting beams. That's when I saw it. A shadow. In the upstairs window of the farmhouse. I squinted, walked closer, but when I got to the house there was no one there. Nothing. Yet the feeling stayed. Like the house itself was watching me. My husband and kids were laughing and playing outside, but I went back in straight to the bedroom. It felt safer. That's when I saw it. In the bathroom mirror, my reflection didn't seem quite right. It looked like someone else was behind me. I turned around. No one. On the third night, well past midnight, I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Slow, steady, pacing inside the house. I jumped out of bed, stepped into the hallway. Nothing. Checked every window. All locked. But as I passed the living room, I saw a dark figure moving outside just beyond the window. I froze. Heart pounding. I ran outside, scanning the dark fields. And there it was. A silhouette. Standing silently near the old well. It didn't move. Just stared. I couldn't move either, paralyzed with fear. Then, in an instant, the figure vanished. Like it had never been there. My husband woke to my screams. I told him what I saw. He laughed gently. Said I was imagining things. But I know what I saw. And I knew the house was watching me. The next morning, I locked every door and window, refusing to step outside. We were preparing to leave, and I couldn't wait to get back to the city. That's when I noticed something deeply wrong. One of the living room windows was wide open. I know I had locked it. But worse, there was a painting on the wall. It used to show just a quiet field. But now, something had changed. In the center of the painting were eyes. 2 of them. Clear as day. Watching me. I ran. I didn't even look back. But even now, I still feel it, eyes watching me, footsteps echoing in the night. The house is abandoned again. But I'll never forget that feeling. The eyes in the walls. The painting. The stare that never leaves. Have you ever felt like you were being watched, even when no one was around? Could it be that the house knew what I was thinking? Would you ever go back? Story 4, Voices Beneath the Floorboards. I never believed in the supernatural. To me, everything had an explanation: science, logic, or just the brain misfiring under stress. But everything I believed started to shake, in the fall of 2009, when I moved into a small house on the outskirts of Vermont alone. The house was tucked between maple trees, so quiet you could hear the leaves drop on the roof. I rented it from an elderly couple who'd recently retired. They said the place got cold at night, the old wooden floors might creak, but there was nothing to worry about. At first, I thought the same. Just an old house with rotting floorboards and yellowed walls from years of use. But after just 2 weeks, I began hearing sounds I couldn't explain, and they seemed to come from beneath the floor. The first sound came around 1 a.m. A vague voice whispered right into my ear while I drifted between sleep and waking. Don't go below." I jolted up, heart racing. No one was in the room. The windows were shut. I checked my phone, no calls. I figured maybe it was the TV downstairs echoing. But I lived alone. And the TV had been off for at least 30 minutes. The next morning, I checked the living room floor. The wood creaked, sure, but nothing was hollow. No basement. But if there was no basement, where had the voice come from? The next night, the sounds returned. Only this time, clearer. More than one voice. An old man's whisper, slow and deliberate. A child's voice, soft, like a lullaby. And a woman's voice, angry, almost hissing. All of them, beneath the floor. I began losing sleep. Not just from fear, but because every time I closed my eyes, I heard scratching beneath me. As if someone or something was trying to get out from underneath my feet. One morning, while sweeping, I heard a sharp creak in the corner of the living room. I stopped. Pressed my ear to the floor. My heart dropped. I heard a voice. "Let me out. Let me out." I grabbed a crowbar and pried up a few planks. Under the dust and cobwebs was a shallow space no bigger than a chest. Inside were torn cloth, old toys, and a broken wristwatch. Nothing unusual until I noticed. The watch was still ticking. Even though the hands were broken. Even though there were no batteries. I threw everything out of the room and nailed the boards shut. But after that day, the voices no longer waited for nightfall. They echoed any time I stepped into the living room. Like I had woken them up. I started asking around about the house's history. But locals avoided my eyes. One elderly man finally muttered, "You should leave. Don't dig deeper. That house used to have a basement. They filled it in, After the disappearance. Disappearance. Whose? That night, I went back to the floorboards. I pulled them all up, dug into the dirt below. And I found a small iron hatch, chained shut with rusted links. It took me over 2 hours to break the lock. When the hatch creaked open, a wave of rot hit me, the stench of something long dead. Below was a pitch-black chamber. I pointed my flashlight down, and nearly collapsed. 3 tiny wooden chairs sat in a circle, each with ropes still tied to the legs. On the wall, scratch marks, dried blood, and in the center a small box, like an urn. I didn't dare open it. I shut the hatch, covered it back with dirt, and nailed the floor shut. But from that day forward the voices didn't whisper anymore. They screamed every night. They slammed the floorboards. They called my name. I moved out 2 weeks later. Sold the house to a real estate company. Said nothing about what I experienced. But the truth is, I never really escaped. Even now, living in a city apartment, I still hear them sometimes. In that moment between sleep and waking. In dreams. Or when I walk into a room that's too quiet. They whisper, "Why did you open it, and leave us behind?" I don't know if I freed them, or just opened a door that was never meant to be opened. Story 5, The Lighthouse That Never Went Dark. There's a place I've always tried to forget but never could. A place I once thought was peaceful, even romantic, until I realized I was never truly alone there. It was the old lighthouse on Crosswinds Bay, an isolated stretch in northern Maine. I first went there as a third-year maritime engineering student, joining a volunteer program to help restore historical landmarks. Crosswinds Lighthouse stood on a high cliff, blanketed in fog nearly all year round. No electricity. No phone signal. Completely cut off from the modern world. I stayed there for 12 days. But something inside those stone walls, something about that light that never went out. I still can't explain it. The lighthouse was said to have been decommissioned in 1987 after a stormy night when the last keeper vanished without a trace. They said he left behind no bag, no code, no letter. Only the light remained still shining. When our team arrived, the wiring had already been stripped out, so the light should have been off long ago. But the first night I slept there, I saw a beam sweeping across the window, steady, rhythmic, as if someone was still operating it. I ran up to the observation deck. No one. The light was still on. I checked inside, no power source, no generator. We assumed maybe it was reflection from an offshore vessel, but the beam was too precise, rotating every 47 seconds. Exactly as described in a 1963 operational log of the Crosswinds Lighthouse. On the 4th night, I had the night watch. Around 3 a.m., fog thick all around, I sat in the lower lounge when I heard heavy footsteps on the spiral staircase. I figured someone from the group was checking in. I called out a few times, no answer. I went up. No one was there. I checked the roster back downstairs, everyone accounted for. All 5 others were asleep in their rooms. No one had left. The next night, I heard soft knocking along the old stone hallway, like fingers tapping gently on every wooden door frame. I froze. And then, my room door slowly creaked open. Just a sliver. The wind couldn't have done that, every other door was tightly shut. I peeked into the hallway and saw a tall, thin man in a worn sea coat standing with his back to me, then disappearing around the corner. On the 9th day, we discovered a rotting journal inside a secret compartment behind the fireplace. The last page was scrawled with no clear date. The writer identified as G.M, the same initials as the lighthouse keeper who vanished in 1987. I can't leave. Every time I try to set sail, the light turns back on, as if it knows I'm escaping. I don't know what's dream anymore. Maybe I died long ago, and this place is the punishment. That very night, one of our team members, Jake, vanished. No noise. No open doors. Nothing disturbed. Just a trail of footprints from his bed to the front door, ending abruptly. No marks in the ground outside. He was never found. Next morning, when the fog cleared, we saw something etched by hand on a large stone beneath the lighthouse. I'll keep the light for you. It's my turn now. We left the lighthouse after day 12. The project was cancelled. No one talked about Jake again. I tried returning a year later just from a boat offshore. The lighthouse still stood. No keeper. No power. But the beam swept on once every 47 seconds. I thought time would dull the memory. But whenever I see a flicker on the horizon, my chest tightens. They say lighthouses are symbols of guidance, of hope. But crosswinds, it doesn't guide. It keeps. I don't dream of it anymore. Because I don't need to. I still hear footsteps on the stairs each nightfall. 47 seconds, 1 rotation. And I know, my turn is coming. Not everything in this world is meant to be understood. Some answers were buried for a reason, and some doors should never be opened. If these stories left you thinking twice about what's real, then we've done our job. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Tales Nameless, where every week, we uncover the mysteries most fear to speak aloud. Share your story below, because sometimes, the only way to escape the darkness is to bring it into the light. Until next time, keep your lights on. And remember, some tales refuse to be forgotten.